Rump's actually a princess? I'm not kissing her.
Welcome everyone who's seeing us and who doesn't speak a lot of Russian. My name is Kata. I'm a student of Animation School, and today, as per our yearly tradition, we have a special meeting with the best and most hardworking students of our school who got the best grades during the teaching. And they're going to get a special review from a person who's already working in the animation industry, who will share their personal insights and just give a review over their animation work. So today we're going to meet with Gabriel Khouzam, who's a 2D animator from Brazil, who worked in a myriad of very cool studios, such as Cartoon Saloon, Titmouse, Renegade, and Sony Pictures Animation. So I'll give the word to you, Gabriel. You can introduce yourself and we'll move on.
Okay, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Gabriel, as said. I've been working professionally in the animation industry for the past 4 years. I most recently finished working in Gendy Tartakovsky film Fixed for Sony. And I'm just very happy to be here. I am very excited to draw over everyone's work and the students' work. Really good animation, love the acting, and yeah, I'm very excited. Thank you so much, Ken. Yeah.
In the animation industry and in our animation school, you can of course ask these questions in the chat right beside our our live stream. That would be right. Just remember to put a big word question in front of your message so I won't miss it. And now let's get into review. Gabriel, I think we can move on to the reviews.
Okay. I will share my screen. Can everybody see my screen? Okay. Let me just adjust something here. I think that's okay. All right. Can you see me drawing on it?
Yep, I can see it.
Perfect. Okay. So first, really fun animation. Love that you picked the character Moshu from Mulan. It's a very nice character to study. So I'm going to say something a little longer right now, but it's going to be not very slow. First, I want to talk a little bit about the intention of the character on the shot. When I press play, I don't know if the sound is being shared, but I'm not going to cover too much about the sound. I'm going to cover more about the acting. Okay, and the first thing I want to talk is about the word simplification. Simplification. I feel that it's something that is necessary here, on the animation and on the design. because when you press play, you see that the character has interesting movements, but they lack a little bit of intention. And even though I don't speak Russian, something that I learned from other animators in the industry is that you need to communicate your shot regardless of what the character is saying. So I'm gonna start by drawing to explain this, how you need to have a more simplified choices and make the character feel as it moves on a whole, not as two different parts. Because what happens in this animation is that the character Moshu, if we look here, he's primarily composed of two big elements. We can draw his body, that is a fun and big like snake type of shape. So let me draw him really quick.
I'll give you a minute, I'll translate.
And don't be afraid to be rough when sketching. It doesn't matter too much if you're doing the right lines or everything. You're just trying to capture the essence of this character. So we can say that this character is pretty much composed of this main part and his arms. And even though there are two different things, when he behaves, I want everything to feel as a whole, as if it was the same character. And what happens in the animation that one of the main things I've noticed is that his arms start doing some movements that don't connect too well with his body. See, I think when I flip here, you see that this is on a different timing and this is on a different timing, which is not bad. It should be, but it doesn't feel they are connected. And the first thing that I want is to improve this as a whole. And this connects me to something else, which is the way that this character needs to be drawn. The character, whenever we are animating, and that's a note that I put for both students that I am reviewing, we need to think more about gesture, placement, and simplification. If you want to translate these three words, I think it's going to be very helpful. And I'm going to apply those three things to every drawing that I'm doing in my animation. So as you students might know what the key is, a keyframe, I'm going to start with them. So I'm going to select a few keyframes here. Probably, let me see this one. I'm going to go with this one here. And I'm going to go with this one. And let me see if this is a key. I'm going to go with this one too. And before I start the draw over, I want to give a visual example for the students of what I mean with that. So I'm going to draw a hand, and I'm going to show what is a good gesture placement and simplification and what is not too good while drawing. So I'm going to use like here, I have how I would approach drawing a hand of a character doing this type of gesture. Very loose, very gesture, and not caring about lines. I'm caring about placement, simplification, and gesture. So when I'm animating, this is constantly on my head. I am not going to draw this hand like this. See, here we can see the difference of what it means. So when I see this drawing here, I want to see more energy, more flow, more gesture, more placement. And this is what the animator should be thinking. Imagine you have to make a cake. So let's say we have a cake here. Think you're making a cake. What do you have to make first? The cake or the frosting? You have to make the cake. So when you're doing an animation drawing, you need to think as if it was a whole thing. You're putting the flour, you're making the dough. You're not going to focus on the frosting. And that's something very common I see on students, which is thinking about what is the equivalent of the frosting in an animation and the cake in an animation. The cake is the gesture, the placement, the rhythm, the energy, the clarity. This is the cake. What is the frosting? The frosting is line, form, design on the lines, online, details. You always need to make the cake first and the frosting second. And here I'm doing an example of what I mean. It's the first time I draw Mushu in my life, so I don't have a shorthand for it yet. So it's a little harder, but you can notice that I'm focusing on making the placement of each part first. And after I see the placement of things, I can see what works better. And this makes it more natural to draw because you're not constantly using Ctrl+Z, you're not constantly using the eraser. So it feels more natural because I'm searching. So I'm thinking about the positioning of things and about the flow of the shapes, the gesture of how can I make this more appealing. His legs could be more squashed here, while his other leg can be a little bit more relaxed. And this way, it becomes also faster to animate because you're not thinking about making the character be fully on model yet. You're just thinking about the main shapes, the main proportions, and how you can simplify this into a more appealing version of the drawing. Thinking more about the flow of shapes, the silhouette, the acting, the clarity of the expression, and everything else except the final lines. I'm not thinking at all at the final lines of the character. And this way you can see that it's still very rough, but you can read the character very clearly. Everything is very, very clear. So when we see the difference, we can still see that it has the same intention that the animator wanted, but it's more exaggerated, its shapes flow better. When designing a face, for example, here, we can see that this is very parallel. So it's like, instead of doing this, we do this. You see that this has a more open shape than this. So this is not nice, this is nice. See?
Great.
And now I'm going to talk about how you can exaggerate more the animation, especially on squash and stretch. So we can see here, I love that the animator chose to squash anticipation, very nice. But you see that you can squash everything. So you see that the squash here is very small. And don't be afraid of, even if it's a small anticipation, to deform the character. Like you can imagine is a little piece of rubber, a little ball, like squash it and stretch it. So here I am going to draw the squashed version while you translate. And notice how every line that I'm putting, I'm researching. Nothing is the final line. So maybe here I noticed that even though this works, it's probably better if I squish him to the other direction. Let's see. Yeah. So we change his shape a little. And notice how I can think of his silhouette as I animate him. And when you squash a character, is interesting because some parts of their character are going to be squashed, some are going to stretch. You just have to feel it, like, and think about the arcs, but everything moves together in a way. Don't animate the body and then animate the hands and animate the arms. Try to place everything together, even if it's just a guess. Later, you can come back and start changing, but don't animate things apart. Notice how I'm constantly thinking about the silhouette. I'm not going to place the arm of this character here. I'm going to make the expression clear because that's the focal point. Okay. So very smart with the decisions of placement. So I'm trying out here. I've noticed that his arm increased the proportion a little, so I just reduce. But I'm not too worried about the final design. I will have time later to go and make a beautiful line and make the shape exactly as it is on the model sheet here. I'm gonna have time for that. For now, I'm just thinking about the placement and gesture. And notice something here. This is more about the animation, not the design. When you go to this key here, and you have his head here and his arm here, these two things, they start fighting each other for space in the visual clarity of the animation. So when the viewer sees, you don't know where to look. If you look here or here, how can I improve that? By exaggerating the whole line of action of this, maybe you can really push the line of action here to like make something go really exaggerated. You can think of the character. This is just a suggestion, and maybe make that little design thing of complex versus simple. Here you have complex and complex. I need to change that. So how do? I probably make this arm get inside the silhouette. So I'm just gonna make this arm go like, probably like I change his acting to, or I can make his arm go like here. I can exaggerate this to something like that. And notice how I can change his acting and everything becomes a little bit more simple. I'm constantly looking at the model sheet because I don't know how to draw Mushu. I'm learning as I go. And this is something that is normal when you get a new character, guys. Don't feel like you have to start knowing how to draw that character. It takes a long time. The movie I was working, it took me 3-4 weeks to learn how to draw the main character. So it's okay if you're a little stuck at the beginning. Try to create ways of simplifying the way that you draw the character before you jump into animation. There's a famous quote from an animator that I worked, and he said, you cannot animate a character before you know how to draw that character. So it's like, you have to spend the time learning how to draw the character. Notice how I changed the placement of things here, so it's easier to read, but here feels empty now. Feels like he needs something. What am I going to do? I'm gonna add his tail here. I'm gonna see how his tail works as a whole with his body too. So make it everything work together. So he squashes, his tail starts squashing too, and then his tail can have a follow through here, and like probably follow like this type of shape, you know, and maybe something like that. And don't get attached to your drawings. You can always change them, exaggerate them more, and don't feel like you have to find the answer at the first drawings you do. It's gonna take a few attempts before you fully find the drawing. So you can see a little bit just by doing that the character start having an intention. But oh, I started animating, this arm here didn't work. It's okay, you can change it later as you go. You can try something different here, you can try maybe here, you know, you changed according to what you feel you need in your animation. And yeah, just exaggerate, feel the weight of the character. So like this arm is here, why not squash it a bit more? You know, maybe this works, maybe it doesn't. See, you can already feel the difference here. You squash it a bit more, you make the shoulder squash, then you create this beautiful flow out of his torso and exaggerate the way he's holding this little candle, I think, right? And you can see that it already starts feeling a little bit more more full of personality. You change the design, you see, and you start playing with it, and it gets richer. And also, you guys might be wondering, why am I constantly flipping the drawing like this? It's because it allows me to see with a fresh eye every time what I'm drawing. So this is a technique that the digital animation gave it to me, because when you're animating on paper, you can't. So that's why I'm constantly flipping. And I'm constantly changing things in my drawings. So, and after I have these frames, they already need to communicate everything I need. So let's say that after this drawing here, like this is the last draw over I'm gonna do on the keys. They need to tell a lot of the story that I want. I like to call my first drawings of an animation, not keyframes. I call them storytelling drawings. So storytelling drawings. They are the first drawings I need to draw. Storytelling, abbreviation, I call them STs. Notice how I'm squashing it even more. And then here, I can just increase the flow of this drawing and make it very gestural. And something I love about Moshu design is that the animator thought about playing around with his ears and horns to show his mood. So you're always playing around with this idea that when he's happy, his ears go like, ah, you know, and when he's sad, the whole shape, not just the ears, they follow a down movement. Notice on this drawing on my screen left here, that notice how everything flows down. The shape of the face, the ears, the eyes. The eyes are not like this. The eyes are like this. And this is simplification. Everything has a meaning. Every line, every shape that you think works together. And notice how every gesture that I do can tell a story. Notice that the way he's holding this candle at the end, if you look at the original frame, it's very still, very vertical. But he's so sad and he's like, I don't know. I don't know what he said, but I assume that he's like, no. And his body is like falling. So you need to get inside the character and think, what everything that he does in that moment, how can that affect my drawing? So he wouldn't hold his candle vertically like that. He would probably just be a little bit more like this, with his hands more relaxed and more sad. So I'm adding that to the drawing too. Notice how something this small can add so much personality. And then the fire is here, and since it's touching the wax, it can start melting, and this can be like a symbol for his tears. I don't know. Make everything connect and talk together, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Notice how I'm trying to make everything looks bad on this last frame, you know? Everything falls, everything is like, So there's the little side of being an animator, that you have to literally be a little bit of an actor. Like, it's not that we are actors with a pencil, but it's more like, how can I behave in a believable way in imaginary circumstances? How can I behave believable, but in imaginary circumstances? This is what the animator needs to be constantly thinking. This is acting. And this is something that it goes from the sensitivity of every animator to the other. There's not something that you can technically teach here. It's more about how the animator sees the world and how he can absorb that and put onto his work. Okay, so this would be my drawovers for this shot. As I've said, really great job with the acting, the animation. The lip sync is really good. It's something I love is that you were very precise with the mouths, because on lip sync, you cannot in between too much the mouth. You have to choose shapes and be smart about your choices, and not just like draw one shape and just open and down. Like, I love that the animator did this. It's very nice. Like when I create here and I can flip it through, you see, I love that it goes from a closed mouth like this. You can exaggerate this closed mouth probably, but it works really nice. Let me just see the design here. Okay. So you have this like closed mouth. And as I was saying in the whole animation, don't be afraid of squashing and stretching the character. Everything needs to be squashed and stretched. So when we think about this part here of his face, don't be afraid of squashing and stretching and squashing and stretching. It's literally lip sync is kind of like a back and forth of squash and stretch and squash and stretch and squash and stretch. So here you can always exaggerate and simplify the shape. So he's smiling, make him smile like really exaggerate the smile, squash the nose. Here you already squashed really well. You know, don't care too much about the final design yet. Just have fun squashing and stretching. You know, never forget to have fun, because this is the most important part. And lastly, I think on this I'm going to talk for 1 second about him, but it's just going to be something very small. And I just want to say one last thing about Mushu's animation, which is the spacing, right? One of the most important things of animation. I love the arcs. I think the arcs work really nicely. I just feel that although the arcs work nice, I would change a little bit about the spacing, because we can see that the character is always moving. It doesn't really stop somewhere at any time. So you need to know when to stop and know when to move. Notice that when he's talking, his head is constantly moving to a lot of spacing. Like the spacing is still very big for this moment. So maybe let's say that he's following this arc here, right? I think this is the arc that the animator was thinking of. You know? Yes, something like that. Let me just change a little because it's a little bit more of a closed arc. Yeah, it's similar to what you did here. Like it goes to that direction. Notice that here you have a drawing here, and then you have another one here, another one here, another one here, another one here, and one here, 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 here. You see that the spacing is not true rhythm. Imagine it's a song. You don't want a song to be ba 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 ba. You want a song to be ba 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 bum 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 bum. So it's like music helps so much in animation. So know that spacing is similar to music. Always imagine that. Music, spacing. Notice that when you think a little bit about this musical quality on spacing, everything gets more visually interesting because you are constantly thinking about contrast. And you can play with those waves of movement. Imagine you're driving a car. You cannot go like, when you go here, you have to slow down. And when you can get faster, then you have to slow down again, and then you get fast again. So it's literally like playing a music with your spacing. That's what I like to call rhythm timing. You have to keep thinking of rhythm. And you have to know when to stop, when to slow down, when to go fast, when to have a more staccato type of movement, like the music, you go like, ba-da-da-da-da. You need to know when you have to do that. And I've noticed that here you did that, and this is great. I love that on this part here, you did this little with his head, and this is genius. So if you just exaggerated the spacing a little, maybe make him go slower here, not much spacing, then fast and hold him here a lot without too much movement on here, just focusing here. And then you go fast again and you go for this back and forth little movement you did with the head and stop. Perfect, you know? And for Mushu, I think that's it. Before I say the last little thing on this shot about this character, do you have any questions from the student or from anyone else?
We have questions specifically about animation, but we're going to go after the reviews.
Okay.
Nastia, do you have any questions? The only thing I probably want to hear is more about Milo, if you could talk about him.
Oh, perfect. That's what I was going to do right now. Great. All right. So the first thing that I've noticed here on this shot with this character is that there were some moments that this character was calling too much attention. When you have two characters in the same shot, you have to be very smart when moving one and when moving the other. Imagine when you do two characters, even when they are not interacting with each other. They are just sharing the same place, the same stage. Imagine you're watching a tennis match. You cannot look at the two players at the same time. It's impossible. You have to look at one, look at the other, look at one, look at the other. So it's the same thing here. If Milo is not the focal point in any moment of the shot, you shouldn't worry too much about him as much motion. I got this example here because it's very silly, it's very stupid, but I think it's a perfect example of what, not this cartoony, it doesn't need to be this cartoony because Milo is a more human, realistic character, but this is a good example of what could be made in this shot. You don't have to animate Milo and all the little details that he's doing because the audience, the person that you are showing this shot is not going to look at Milo at any moment of the shot. It might look at the end, might look a little bit if the attention goes somewhere else, but the person is not going to look. So when I'm going to show this example after you translate to show what can be done for this specific character. And this example is from the short film from Pixar, My Friend the Rat. It's a great short film to study simplification. If you want to get better at simplification, study this movie. Look at this animation. You see how silly and simple it is. Just the arm. The character doesn't need to move. Of course, it's very cartoony. You shouldn't do the same thing, otherwise it's going to look ridiculous. But just think that if you just animate this character here and you do maybe just a moving hold, you know, like you have frame A to frame B here with his body, you just make a moving hold, maybe something like that. And here, you animate, just like you did. You know, this way, it's easier for the audience to know what's going on. And for this case, how I would animate Milo is subjective. You can just do a moving hold and maybe animate his wrist just like you did. You can fully animate him writing, create a cycle of him writing, like cycle, maybe, or full animated, not a cycle. Because here on this animation, we can see that is a cycle. They did one big cycle. It goes like, and that's it. You can do the similar thing here. You don't have to animate the 120 frames of him writing. Just animate 40 frames and then repeat it, you know? Okay. And that's my feedback for Milo. Really good. I would just probably change the animation to save you time too. I know how time consuming it can be to animate a character writing. I think that's one of many animators' nightmares to have to animate a character writing. So let me know if this is good and if I can move to the next shot from the next student.
No, I don't have any questions, but thank you so much for the feedback. That was really useful, very insightful for me. I'm just saying how this is a very insightful stream for everyone who's sitting and watching right now. It's like we're being pumped with knowledge.
Oh, awesome. That makes me very happy. How can I say thank you in Russian?
In Russian? Спасибо.
Спасибо.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm gonna head to the next shot. Can I choose or should you guys want to choose? I have Doppler and Clawhauser. I'm not gonna go too deep on I'm going to talk about both, but since it's two shots, I have to split the time I spent on this shot in half. So I can talk a little bit about Doppler and a little bit about Khouzam.
We can pick any one of them because both of the works are from Evgenia.
Okay, so I'm gonna say something a little longer, but I promise will be just as the same. Same principle here, but first, Doppler is one of the most complicated characters to animate ever. So it's a bold choice to animate Doppler. Like I would, if somebody asks me, Gabriel, what's the most complicated character to animate in Western animation history, is Doppler.
Oh yeah, that's completely true. I found out about this once I started animating. Learned the hard way.
Sergio Pablos, he won the Annie on this character. Well deserved, no, because it's such a it's one of the, in my opinion, it's one of the best works in traditional animation ever, especially in terms of acting. I don't know if you guys have seen shots, but it's genius. This is from Sergio Pablos. And it's genius. It's great. Sergio did one of the most impeccable, perfect jobs any animator in the world could have made. To talk about specifically your shot, I loved how simple you went with the intentions. So we have one storytelling, then I think we have, I would say, two storytellings here. Maybe a little bit further, right? I think this one, yeah. And then this storytelling and this storytelling, I assume. Very simple. Love it. Simplicity. And I will say the same things about the drawings that I did on the previous student, which is gesture, placement, and simplicity. I imagine this is your tie down, which is really nice, really, really nice. You kept the model nice, very good. But there's still some problems in the animation that would have been easily or better solved if it was rough, like Sergio's drawings here. And if we analyze Sergio Pablo's drawings here, you can see the gesture and placement that I've mentioned an hour ago. It's very clear, exactly here. So you see that he's thinking about placement, and you can see this details here on his work. If we analyze, look how many attempts he had here. Had one here, one here, one hand here, one hand here. A lot of attempts. He's searching. He's not like here, here, here. He's like maybe here, no, maybe here, maybe a little here, a little here, a little here. You know, he's always searching. And when we start to draw overs, is think about this placement and gesture. Look how rough this is, but it's so clear. Like this is so clear. There's no doubt that you see the hands where they are. You understand the gesture very clearly. So when we start doing it, we need to try to think the same mindset. It's all in the mindset, not on too much on if you are like, oh, am I certain I have his skills or not? It's about just setting your brain into where it needs to be. Great. So I'm gonna start by thinking of the same principle. Again, Doppler. What a fantastic character to draw. I'm gonna go very gestural here. Just trying to think. Notice how I'm exaggerating already his line of action. On your drawing, he's very stiff. I want something more like, okay? So, and something I would suggest is, even though it's helpful to follow those book ways of drawing, of like draw a circle and then draw this and draw that and draw the eye, I have an approach that I feel is more efficient and more natural, and it works better to be more gestural about this. So maybe a little bit of a replacement representation of the head and a quick representation of the nose and the mouth can already tell me so much about the character. Like this already tells me the same thing as if I was doing this and this and this and this. You know, don't be afraid of placing. If we look at the master's drawings, like I'm gonna get the example.
I'll translate where I get it.
So when we look at this masterful drawings from the master Milko, we see exactly this approach of gesture and placement and simplification. He's not thinking about constructing the character with boxes or cylinders or everything. No, he thinks about the placement and gesture of things. So he can quickly already place the head of a character here, for example. Look how simple this is here. He places very fast the position of the head and the position of the nose. He thinks so much about the gesture, about the energy, and he's not thinking about the final line, if you notice. He's thinking about the way things are placed in space and how that affects the animation. So the same thing here we would do. We're thinking a little bit about the placement of things. Again, as I've said, Doppler is definitely not an easy character to draw. I think this is actually one of the first times of my life that I'm drawing him. So it's not easy. You have to really get used to the design of this character first, and then think about animating him. Because my, oh my, this is a complicated character to draw. But you can see here that even with a little bit of a scribble, I would redraw this whole frame, I think, after I learned how to draw this character. But we can notice that it already has a little bit more of intention on the posing, right? So it gets a little bit more, you can always exaggerate a bit more, push a little bit here. Like I feel that it would be interesting if he was really stretching his lip forward, like, you know, making this type of gesture, because probably this would help a lot with what you want to say with him, you know. So he has a little, that's tricky. Think like that, probably, no. Yeah. So I would change a little bit the placement of this arm. I feel that he needs to be a bit more here, probably. I think here, trying to think what can work here. Sometimes you have to literally stop animating, stand up, and try to think, how can this arm fall on my waist? So probably like that. Okay. And then you come back and try to replicate the same flow of movement you just felt from your own body. I prefer doing this than actually recording video reference. It makes it more authentic, because even though we can be good actors sometimes, we are not the character. So it's better to just try to imagine what is to behave on imaginary circumstances in a believable way. And here I'm using Sergio's work as reference, of course. And I'm just gonna try to improve the staging. It's very clear what's happening, but I can improve the staging. I can make it clearer. I can make it more obvious. When the audience is watching a movie in a theater, they only have one chance to understand your shot. Your shot is not going to be played twice, 3 times, 4 times. It's once. So you need to be as obvious and direct as you can with every intention, because you only have one chance. It's like you're a basketball player and you have one chance to throw to the hoop. Whether you make it or you make it, you don't have the chance of not making it, because if you don't make it, the director is not going to approve your shot. So that's why this is so important. And you can see that here, I'm literally exaggerating a little bit the gesture, pushing a little bit forward, just trying to sell the whole gesture. And I have to make the audience look here. So I'm gonna pull his head down a little, really emphasize the eyes, because that's where he goes like, ah, I'm looking at something, you know? And so I'm literally doing that. I want to emphasize his gesture here. Notice how everything needs to be ultra simplified, especially because he's a very complex design. So if I don't simplify him, it's going to get harder to do anything with him. And everything needs to follow the flows of the gesture. So if he bends forward, even this little circle he has on his chest helps the gesture. Something that is interesting to know is that a lot of characters in animation have what I like to call landmarks when drawing. So I don't know if you guys ever watched Klaus. I didn't work on Klaus, but you can see that Jasper, he has this little two things on his shoulder. I imagine it's something like that, I think. And then he has his neck and everything else. This things is to help the animator, literally, to follow the arcs. So a lot of the animation designs we see for traditional animation have little landmarks, like this little thing, like his nose being this circle, to help the animator animate. And here I'm just pushing the gesture of Doppler. And you can see that on everything. I'm going to go for the next drawing. Not going to spend too much time on this drawing. It's very rough. But another thing here, I'm going to talk a little bit about the animation. Notice that on your animation, if I put this down, he sees, he goes, then something that would be interesting here for you to change is he sees, he goes, he pulls down his glasses like I did, then he sees something and goes. Remember the tennis match, everything going one thing at a time. And I see that on yours here, he looks and is already moving. You need to simplify that. Notice how even I'm being very rough, I can already show exactly what I want to do. I want to make him notice what's going on there. And then I just make that same thing I talked on the previous student of making the shape of the head doing this, not parallel. See how I'm opening here and I'm closing it here. So make the ear too go high. I don't know if he does those things of like he listened to something maybe. So his
like
ears, yeah, like a dog. Because he is kind of a dog. I don't know what character.
Yeah, I think he's
what
a dog.
Thing is. Yeah. So use these attributes of the character to add personality to him. And yeah, constantly flip the drawings. Keep looking for the best choice you can make. I noticed that this hand was making too much movement. So probably just like opening the fingers a little and this one goes a little up, but everything kind of stays still. Maybe something like that. You can make the shoulder line move a little down, maybe. Yeah, see, look at that, guys. This is very interesting. With one line, I can already show what I want. I don't need to fully draw the arm. one line, the audience is already able to see that I want the elbow and the shoulder to go down a little. 2 lines, it makes it even clearer. See, I'm gonna leave this one as it is right now, so we don't get too much time with this one. And lastly here, this one is really great. Like, again, I feel that these two are competing a little. Not that they shouldn't, it works. I would do the same here, but I would put probably this hand a little bit down here. So let's try, or maybe a little bit higher, depends. There's a famous quote from Picasso that I think is very nice for the students to know. That is like, learn how to talk with your drawing. Don't go to the page like, I know what I'm doing. You need to have the confidence of like, I am an animator, but don't feel like you're gonna have all the solutions. Let your drawing talk to you. You're gonna put something onto the paper and you're like, I didn't like that. Why you didn't like that? Because the drawing is telling me it doesn't work. So I need to try something else. So try to talk with the drawing. Yeah, and like what I'm doing here is playing around with the character personality applied to the gesture. So I remembered I watched a video on YouTube with Sergio Pablos that he was talking about Doppler. And he said the Doppler is a character that he has a hard time sticking with the gesture. So he's constantly like, he doesn't know, he's never comfortable with what the pose that he's like staying. So I thought about applying a little bit of that to the way that he's holding his thing. So he's like, he's holding his little like jacket on this super uncomfortable way. And his hands are always close to his body because he's never too confident. Like, this is something we see with people. The more unconfident they are, the more close to their body they stay. They're not too expensive. So it's expanded. So like they don't expand. They always stay like this. So maybe putting his hands a little bit more like, hi, you know, like uncomfortable smile. It's better than making him go like, hi, you know? See, like I am really playing with this uncomfortable way of him being. And at the same time, always trying to find solutions to simplify the gesture. So it's like, maybe this here, maybe I shrank a little his size. Let me adjust that. His head is a little small here. You know, those things, digital animation really helps, you know. But be careful with digital animation, guys, because it might teach you guys a lot of tricks, but those tricks can become addicting and it can damage the way you think. Like, yeah.
I'm just joking how it is completely true, because when I draw on paper, sometimes it happens. I draw a line I don't like and I try to click on the paper with my fingers and then it clicks.
Yeah.
I am an iPad baby.
It's so important to try to translate the paper mindset to the digital, because what's happening nowadays is that a lot of animators, that even animators that are working in the industry, they don't have that quality of work and drawing, mostly because of that. The digital media can kill a part of the artistic side of drawing. And there's the part of confidence, there's the part of being bold, not using Ctrl-Z. The last thing is, like, I remember that I worked in a production in Cartoon Saloon that James Baxter, the animator, he said that it's very nice if you can animate an entire shot, like rough, without pressing play once, only after you're done. Because this is the same mindset of an animator working on paper. So this is something I highly recommend for all the animation students. Animate a shot and don't press play until the end. No worries. And here I'm doing a little thing that would be interesting for the student to do as a secondary movement, something different that I haven't talked yet. That is like, play around with this little quirks and gesture that he might have. Try to like create a moving hold on his balance, on his body, and make the hands do a little, you know, like those little things can add so much to the character and to the performance. You know, like you make the hand just go like a little bit of a of a movement, this can add a lot to the character performance in general. So this is what I am doing here. And notice how gestural I'm being, and you can clearly read my intentions. And this is what I mean about being clear with simplification and gesture, but don't be afraid of being rough. Remember, being rough is not thinking. Being rough is being loose on the way you put the ideas on the paper, not lazy lines. I'm thinking about the lines. You're all like, I'm just like, I don't want to care about the shapes yet. I'm going to have time for that later, you know? And right now I'm thinking about the idea. So you see, like, you can read more or less that these are keyframes, but I just want them to be like, you know, something like that. So this is very helpful for the animator. Okay. So does the student have any question about this particular shot, or can I move to the next one?
Okay, we can go on. Everything so far so good.
Thank you. Hauser, let me see where, here we go. Let me create a new layer. Okay. Not much of an easy character again, but it's still simpler than Doppler. Let me just get the model sheet of this character that I forgot to grab. It's very easy. The designs are from Borja Montoro. Okay. Okay. Save to photo. 1 second, guys.
While you're looking.
Okay, I'm grabbing the model sheet here so I can talk a little bit about this. Let me just grab here. Okay. Great. Let me just put them side by side. Awesome. So this shot here, let me play with sound. I don't know if the sound is working, but it's okay. Same things applied about the gesture, same placement. I'm not going to go over that again. I'm going to talk about new things. So I just have to come back to something I mentioned, which is the tennis match. He's interacting with a ladybug that I know that is just one red dot, but the same concept applies. Always try to make one thing move at a time. Or like, if something is moving fast and the other thing can't stop, try to make it slow. If something is moving slower, make the other thing faster, and vice versa. Okay, so I'm gonna do 5 drawovers or 6, but they're gonna be quicker, okay?
Я думаю, где-то я сделаю 5 или 6 набросков, но они будут быстрее.
Okay, this pose here, I would say works very well. I wouldn't change almost anything here. Just a little thing of design here and there. So I think this one's I'm just gonna leave it as they are. But then on this one here, come back to the first student, squash it. Don't be afraid. Treat it as if it was a little croissant, like really squash it, okay? Don't be afraid. I'm gonna squash this one to show. Like really, really feel it. Imagine you just have a little piece of bread and a rubber bread in your hand and you have to squeeze it. It's the same principle, okay? Don't be afraid to squish it as much. There's no such thing of like, oh, it's too much. I prefer a lot than a little. So, because usually the audience doesn't see, the audience just feels. Squashes are usually just felt by the audience. The audience is not gonna see like the character squash. The squash is literally just to create that string momentum for the audience to see. So they're never gonna look at your drawing. Even if you squeeze them, you're just gonna feel it. So just squash it. And something about fun about squash and stretch is that Whenever something squashes, the other thing squashes too. And usually they go to opposite direction. So imagine you have a little ball here and you have another ball here. They're on top of each other. When they squash, this ball squashes and this other one squashes up. So one goes up, the other goes down, always. So here, you see that this is happening. This goes up, this goes down, and it squashes each other. Okay, and here, the opposite, stretch.
So cute.
Notice how everything has been stretched. It's not just like the cheeks or just the nose. Everything reflects on each other. You can try that on your face. Look at yourself in the mirror, really open your mouth. Look how everything stretches. Your eyes, your nose, your cheeks, your lips, your ears, everything follows that. And when you get mad, everything squashes too. So something that I'm used to seeing on a lot of students' work is when they think about squash and stretch, the only thing they do is the cheeks. No, everything stretches, everything squashes. And notice how I'm trying to change the angle of to create a little bit more interest on the shape, thinking a little bit of design here, because I don't want to make, I really don't want to make this character be like this. I want to make this character sometimes be like this, be like this. Try to make it work as a whole, as a unity, as you see here on the left. See everything trying to make as a whole. Same thing here. Look at a good design opportunity here. Look at his arms. What if I make this? You know?
Sorry, I got distracted myself and started thinking, analyzing what you're saying.
Notice how I am exaggerating the angle of his face, just like I did on Doppler. So it makes it clear for the audience that he's looking at this little creature. You know, I can even change here to make him look cuter. I make his eyes like centered, looking at the little ladybug, and exaggerate the line of action a lot, make it really go forward, make his ears probably, let me see, maybe here they can
like
just
a cat, like
here.
Yeah,
Like to the sides. Always explore this side of the character, the side of the character that, like, he's a cat. Try to add cat things to your animation. You know, he's a dog. Try to add, oh, he's a human. But what type of personality does he have? Like, the worst thing we can do as an animator, this is a little hard to listen, is use generic actions. Oh, I'm sad. Oh, I'm happy. Oh, I'm so angry. Those are terrible because everybody's used to that. Nobody behaves like that. When you see an animation on the internet that you're like, I love this. Why do you love that? Because the animator grabbed something from real life and added to the animation. It's like caricaturing real life. And notice how here, I'm literally going to try to change a lot of the pose to make it simple. So I'm going to put his arm inside his silhouette to try to make it read easier, because we can see that on the animation drawing, the arms are parallel to each other and out of the silhouette. This creates a weak pose because you don't know where to look. If we guide the audience eye with our drawing like that, You know, you don't have to worry about the model too much. Just worry about the gesture. Like, is he going to just look at the little creature like that? You know? But if he just sees the little thing flying on the palm of his hand or here, you know, and he's just like looking straight at it. I don't have a good angle of this character here. I think it's like that. So let me just try to redraw his head.
I'll explain what you talked about.
And then you just emphasize this side of the character and try to make everything more like clear. I know this character is very has a very feminine way of behaving, like in a very like ridiculous way, but it's like very caricatured. So try to make the limb, his arms move more like, you know, like that's why I choose to make his arm like that, because I know he would probably look like, oh, what a beautiful little ladybug, you know. Try to add those little quirks from the character, especially if the character already exists. Watch Zootopia. Take notes like, oh, why did the animator did this? Why did this happen? And try to recreate those. And yeah, I'm just exaggerating the way you could push this pose. Really. And then you can, when you start adding the details of the character, you can make it more appealing, play around with his nose here, and just have fun, you know, like it's such a fun character to draw and so full of energy and personality. So take advantage of those things on the drawing and just have fun. Like when we flip, we can see the difference on the gesture of the character here, you know?
Yeah, that's completely true.
And of course, as you draw, you can, let's say when you're on tie down and you already have the gesture, you can think more about form. Like for example, this head here, the perspective of the face is a little wrong. So you just use a lot of the model sheet as reference. Like look at this great drawing on the left here. You can literally use that, and like just with a few lines, you can already like make it look more believable from the angle you have. Don't be afraid of like drawing in hard angles, because those things can really add to the character, you know. Like just by doing this, you can already feel a little difference. And yeah, great. And I think for the drawovers of this one, I am done. Again, really great animation. This one here, I loved the arcs you chose. Very, very well executed. Just simplifying a little more, like focusing a little bit more on the simple ways you can draw the character. But I love it that you told one thing at a time. Amazing, like didn't rush with the on getting out of a pose or getting into a pose. Always one thing at a time. Make the ladybug move when the character is moving slow. You did that here. Perfect. Really great job. And I feel that right now I'll be down for questions. If anybody has questions to ask me.
Знаешь, что принесет целый поток идей? Долгий здоровый сон.
Make a wish! Make a wish!
Okay, we have several questions, and the first one will be, is it true that animators can sit without like a job or a gig between different projects, or, you know, can they sit with, how long can you sit without work between different projects?
Okay, so yes, it's true. You can, depending on how much you were able to save in the project you were working. Right now, I'm currently technically on vacation because I just finished my recent project for over a year, and I'm gonna just travel a little right now. I am in vacation by choice because I am out of a project, but this is by choice. And yes, you can. Of course you can. That's one of the greatest privileges of doing freelance, is that you are the one that manages your career in a way. And when you want to take time off, for how long do you want to take time off? But it has the downsides too. It's not paid time off. So you have to use your savings. You have to do everything by yourself. There's nobody helping you on that. But if you plan, yes, you can. If you plan.
If you have an opinion about that, we have a question. What do you think about artificial intelligence? How you think it might affect animation, or does it affect any like possible future for animation? In your opinion, like it's a big question.
Yeah, I think there are two sides to this question based on my opinion. The first part is I am part of the group that absolutely hates and demonizes artificial intelligence. I don't like, I don't use, and I hope I never have to work with a studio that uses that. But at the same time, there are people that say this can be efficient. I feel that even if they are able to make the artificial intelligence work well, I don't think it will ever substitute that anything on the animation industry, because quality comes from personal experience. So every animation, design, movie you see that is really good and touches you and makes it special, it's because there's a human behind. So it can create appealing images, yes, but appealing images doesn't mean good quality images, in my opinion. So that's why I don't support, and I don't believe it will ever substitute us professionals in the animation industry.
Okay. Do you have anything else to add if you wanted to?
No, the next question,
Okay.
if you want.
Good. Okay, next questions. It's going to be a long question, but a pretty good one. Good evening, Gabriel. Thank you for coming and doing the reviews for the students today. I have a question about like learning animation, which, for if you have any particular skills on mind, which I should train first when I'm only starting on this animation journey. Which should I focus on first of all?
Okay, very, very simple. Observational drawing. You need to master a lot of your fundamentals, such as drawing perspective, everything else. This is important. But when it comes to animation, observational drawing, you need to understand how gesture works in the real world. You need to be able to simplify poses. You need to be able to do quick poses in life drawing. I would say observational. Learn how to observe life and caricature. That applies to every area you want to follow in the animation industry. Whether it's character design, animation, 3D modeling, doesn't matter. You need to learn how to caricature life and simplify it. That's the biggest skill you have to work for the rest of your life being an animation professional.
Да, это очень хороший вопрос, и у меня для него на самом деле очень простой ответ есть. Конечно, вы, когда начинаете рисовать, вообще, чтобы работать в 2D-анимации, вам нужно знать там, перспективу, композицию, вот такие как бы вещи, это все, естественно, база, но именно для анимации один навык, который не так часто упоминают, это наблюдение за окружающим миром. То есть, ну, как бы, когда вы будете изучать основы и будете вот понимать, соответственно, как там, строить изображение, как работать в объеме, вы также должны учиться работать над тем, как вот быстро понимать жест, например, человеческий, как бы что он изображает. Вам нужно понимать, как можно легче упростить позу. Вы должны уметь делать быстрые наброски. То есть вы должны учиться наблюдать за жизнью, которая происходит вокруг вас, упрощать ее и как бы карикатуризировать, не знаю, карикатуры, как бы фильтровать фактически все, что вы видите, и собирать из этого самые как бы гротескные, самые выразительные моменты и уметь как бы из обычной жизни фильтровать вот эту самую интересную ее часть. Я думаю, что это очень важный навык для аниматоров. Вообще аниматор, наверное, не только для аниматора, а вообще в целом для тех, кто работает с визуальными вещами. И, в принципе, не только. Вы должны уметь наблюдать за жизнью, которая происходит вокруг вас, и как бы ее передавать в вашем творчестве. И только отдельно от себя скажу, что очень часто мы здесь повторяли фразу правдоподобные движения в воображаемой ситуации. Вот то же самое. Чтобы уметь сделать правдоподобное движение, вы должны понимать, как это происходит на правде. Which mistakes do you see most often in students' works? And if you could go back to your beginning of your animation journey, what would you say to yourself? What advice would you give for yourself?
Okay, that's a very good question. The thing that I see the most in students' work is worrying too much about the final drawing and not caring about the gesture and intention of your drawing. So not understanding or not having the maturity yet to draw rough and smart. This is something very hard to do, which is simplifying your choices and being gesture. People focus too much on making the final line and forget about the most important part, which is the gesture of your drawing, the pose of your drawing.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, you can translate that, and then I will answer the second part.
Mm-hmm. What would you say to yourself? Okay.
And if I could come back to myself and tell myself something, I would say to my younger self to not be afraid of making, of exploring different arts. If you want to be an animator, study animation, but don't just study animation. Study a lot of other things. Study sculpture, study painting, go outside and draw from your favorite cafe, draw figure drawing. All of those things, they improve your animation because an animation is part of you, is art, but you need to feed that artistic side of you with different types of crafts. So that's where the inspiration comes from. So if I could come back to my previous self, I would say, don't be afraid to explore. Do sculpture classes. Watch videos on YouTube on how to do color keying, paint. Don't just focus on animating. Like work on all the crafts you like. Have fun, especially when you're like a student that you don't need to have a job yet.
Okay, that was very good. We have two. Okay, two. We have two questions that are on topic, one off topic. I'm gonna, I think, answer it myself. More of an open question. How hard it's to learn to animate in 2D and 3D?
Okay, I'm not a 3D animator. I don't know how to animate a bouncing ball on my, I know that they both share the same principles. They both share the same process, if you want. I think 3D animation can be trickier in terms of learning how to use the software. but I feel that traditional animation still requires a little extra skill. And not saying that no, don't get me wrong. 3D animators are just as great as 2D animators. Is that the 2D animation side has the side of drawing, physically draw. And in 3D, you're using a puppet with rigging, which is very tricky to use. But 2D animation requires you to draw every frame and keep the model. You don't have to worry about model in 3D. But the principles are the same. So if you already have a good foundation in 2D animation and you want to be a 3D animator, it's going to be easier for you. And the same vice versa. If you are already a 3D animator and you want to learn 2D, it's going to be easier because they both share so much in common. And same with stop motion too. Like I dream of working in a stop motion. Like I've always wanted to. So I know that they share the same principles.
We have, I think, one last question. Okay. I think it was asked when you talked about freelance work and how you can organize everything yourself, but it gives you, a bit more pressure. And they're asking, so is the answer was related only to freelance work? Non-freelance jobs are more stable?
It depends. Most of the times, the more stable job doesn't work with the remote factor. I work as a remote animator. I don't have the interest for now to go somewhere else to work. So bureaucratically saying, it's so much easier for you to work as a freelance remotely than full-time, because usually studios, when you have to work full-time, you have to go to the office, you have to do a lot of other things that geography limits you. So it can be more stable, yes, but it has a lot of other factors that need to be met to become this stable job. You might have to move out of your country. You might be willing to have a smaller paycheck because you will have benefits like health insurance and other things. So it is more stable, but it doesn't mean it's the best choice for all the people. So you can have a more steady job, but at the end of the day, if you compare both have the same levels of pros and cons. So there's not an option that is better than the other.
And I think we have one more question. You don't have to answer it. I think it's in general. Could you talk about the story about, could you talk more about the franchise called Transformers? I think that would be a very interesting topic, but I think not for today. I think we can skip the Transformers discussion.
I'm sorry.
If you want to.
What?
The question was, can you tell us more about the history of creation of Transformers as a franchise? I think that would be very interesting. I think that would be interesting, but it's not for today. But I just wanted to mention it because that was an interesting question. I'm saying thank you to you, Gabriel, for being with us today.
Thank you.
It was an honor to see how you work and how you explain everything. And I think everyone who's been here today found something insightful for themselves and answering, our questions and just reviewing our work. That was very, very interesting, I think, for all of us.
Thank you. Thank you. It was a pleasure. Keep up the great work. You guys are doing really well. And yeah, just be positive about the industry. It has space for everyone from everywhere. I feel that after this remote wave of work we have nowadays, there's space for everyone. It doesn't matter where you are. You can be in the most remote place of Russia in the world. You will be able to work for the big studios if you reach the quality they want. So know that there's no boundaries on the animation industry. So yeah, just keep studying, keep working, and I'm sure that the first job in industry is not too far.
Thank you for such kind words. I think this is the time we will probably be finishing for today. And I think we can say bye-bye. Thank you for being with us today.
Hello everyone, this is Animation School. My name is Edward Kurchevsky and I'm professional 2D animator based in Paris.
Bobby, would you care for a piece of pie?
I studied animation over 10 years in one of the top schools in the world, and now I'm ready to share my knowledge with you. In the past 4 years of teaching, my students achieved remarkable results and working in studios like Cartoon Saloon, Skiald, studying in schools like WildBrain L'école de l'image and CalArts.
I'm not sure what we've got here, Charlie. But if we've got what I think we've got something.
Our goal is to prepare qualified professionals in a short amount of time during our intense course. We are here to also create a bridge between you and studios and help you find your first professional position in industry. Online studying became one of the most important parts in worldwide education system, and I am pretty sure with us you will achieve great results. Good luck!